Crusader Kings 3, the 1178 start date. How accurate is the Byzantine Empire's starting position and territories? Now, I love Crusader Kings and I love the Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire, the Roman Empire, whatever name you prefer to refer to the medieval polity of the Romans. Now, the inclusion of an 1178 start date is a fascinating one for Byzantium, with Basileus Manuel Komnenos in his twilight years. Byzantium is at its strongest state in 120 years, since the Turks invaded and occupied the Anatolian heartlands of the empire. Historically, at this point, the Byzantines had reclaimed large portions of Anatolia thanks to the vigorous campaigning efforts of Manuel's predecessors, his father John II and grandfather Alexios I. The imperial borders Manuel inherited upon his father's death in 1143 would remain largely the same during his own reign. Manuel defeated the Hungarians in the Balkans, consolidating and securing his rule there, and would later reassert Byzantine control in Cilicia and make Latin Antioch a client state of Byzantium. In Anatolia, during the latter half of his reign, after a long peace with the Seljuks, Manuel would launch a campaign against the Turks of Rum, centered in Konya in 1176. Konya, which was ruled by Kilij Arslan II, had become too powerful after the death of Nur al-Din of the Zengid dynasty in northern Syria, who had menaced the Seljuks of Inner Anatolia from the east, thus keeping their power in check in the region. Manuel sought to counter the now rising power of Konya, who had expanded into the Danishmend territory in eastern Anatolia, and halt the changing demographics of central Anatolia as a whole, with Turkish pastoralists pushing out the native Roman agriculturalists. The campaign he launched was an unmitigated disaster for Byzantium, with Manuel failing to scout the mountain passes his army would travel through, leading to defeat at the Battle of Myrocephalon in 1176, which was amongst the worst Byzantine military disasters faced by the empire since the defeat suffered by his grandfather Alexios I in the 1080s and 1090s. With this defeat, so ended Byzantine hopes of recovering Inner Anatolia and reversing the cultural, demographic and oncoming territorial changes brought by the Turks. This defeat, however, did not lead to any large-scale territorial changes afterwards. Instead, it simply confirmed the status quo and reaffirmed the Komnenos-era borders of the period. Manuel did, however, enjoy some success repelling Turkish rage after this, but territory remained fixed. So, that brings me to the 1178 start date, the newest bookmark introduced in the Roads to Power DLC for Crusader Kings 3. Here, I will purely discuss the Byzantine starting position and a few events, not the DLC as a whole, which is fantastic. So, as you can see, this is the Byzantine starting position in the bookmark, and quite unfortunately, it's not entirely accurate. To begin with, it's worth noting that the Byzantines held suzerainty over the Serbian states. That is not really represented in the game, but because it's not really a proper game mechanic, this is forgivable. Moving over to Anatolia, one of the key issues is how many of the coastal and inland provinces were not fully reworked for this update. So accurately recreating the Byzantine borders as they were under Manuel will result in a few inaccuracies, such as coastal provinces stretching far too inland or inland provinces being too vast in territory. Here is an example image from one of my recent games, showing how trying to recreate the Komnenos-era borders within Anatolia results in the Romans not owning enough of Inner Anatolia, and the coastal borders, for some strange reason, stretch further inland than they should. The area within the red line should all be under direct Byzantine rule, and the peculiar coastal regions that stretch far too inland are encircled in gold. Now, this is a much more accurate representation of what the Byzantine Empire should look like during this time period. Here, we can see the full extent of Byzantine rule in Anatolia. Clearly, it's quite a bit different than what is presented in the 1178 bookmark. I've highlighted the areas that were not under direct rule from Constantinople in gold. These include the various Serbian realms, what remained of Armenian Cilicia after Manuel reasserted Byzantine rule, and the Principality of Antioch. Represented in game, Byzantine territories should look something like this in the 1178 start date, while ignoring the surrounding nations. Again, I'm not entirely sure why the extent of Byzantine territory isn't fully displayed in the 1178 start date. Perhaps it was a balance issue, as it's already relatively easy to reconquer Anatolia should you wish in the game. My only other minor nitpick here would be the rise of the Second Bulgarian Empire, which historically occurred when Isaac Angelos, who reigned from 1185 to 1195, and then again briefly between 1203 and 1204, refused a request from the Bulgarian brothers Peter and Asen. They requested a pronoia, an estate that would provide them with revenue in exchange for military service. The Vasilevs refused their request, and Asen was allegedly struck as a rebuke. The two brothers then returned to Bulgaria and rebelled against Byzantine rule, beginning the Second Bulgarian Empire and ripping away a vital province from the Byzantines that had been under imperial rule since the time of Zimisces and Basil II 160 years ago. In-game, however, this revolt occurs usually around 1180, starting as an uprising, without any of the relevant context to Isaac Angelos' slight against the Bulgarian brothers. Though I suppose it is forgivable given if the player is playing as Byzantium, the historical context is almost certainly not going to occur. Anyway, that brings this essay to a close. I hope whoever may have decided to watch this found it insightful. My sources are the works of renowned Byzantine historian Anthony Kaldellis, and I will link them below. GG.